Sinister. Very happy to have you. Today, of course, we are joined by Joe Giacalone. Joe, how are you?
Good, Josh. Hanging in there. How about you, man?
Very good, thank you. So, this is a show that we're going to talk about. I wanted to talk about these Google searches so long. Uh, Sorry. And there's so much you don't realize how much you can glean from these Google searches. That's, I think, what's really important. And if you go through them, I think that there's a lot of stuff for us to kind of talk about. And even we've actually never gone through them one by one because, as you know, there some of them are pretty difficult to say the least.
Yeah, no, not only are they difficult, but they're very disturbing. So we'll discuss these wherever they are numbered for everybody. So
Yeah,
when you're, doing it, we'll put them up on the screen. We'll number them because there's just certain, and you'll see it. There's certain words we just can't say.
right. But before we begin, some house cleaning notes that I think are very important. Number one, we have a upcoming trial date this Tuesday, the 13th, correct? It is going to be a court hearing for the People versus Rex Heuermann, Tuesday, January 13th. The Honorable Timothy Mazie will be presiding. Is he presiding over the whole case?
I believe he is. Yes.
That is
From
a good.
beginning to end. Yeah, he's been there the entire time through all the suppression hearings. And this is another suppression hearing.
Right.
So
Right. So the question is, the suppression hearing is about Valerie Mack, correct, and Sandra Castilla.
Sandra
So,
Castillo, yeah.
what do we think Michael Brown is going to try and suppress here?
Well, I mean, for Sandra Castillo, it's got to be the DNA. I mean, that's it. And same thing with Valerie Mack. I mean, the only problems that he has is that these were both victims were found outdoors. So we search warrant issues are not really a thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to attack this because, like I've said in the past, he's lost every one of these hearings already, and I think he loses this one also. I mean, does it come down to the abandonment sample, right? Where they collected, whether it was the pizza box, whether it was his daughter's drink, or whether it was hair follicles, right? All those abandonment samples. Is
Yeah.
that going to be the argument? If it is, he's going to lose this one too because the Supreme Court has already said in California versus Greenwood. This is an acceptable way for law enforcement. Once you throw something out, you no longer have your right to privacy to it. Police can collect it and they can test it. So if that's what he's hanging his hat on, and we won't know until Tuesday, excuse me, we won't know for sure. But if that's what he's hanging his hat on, we're gonna get him a new coat rack.
Well, and we keep going back and forth, right? When you look at the evidence, it's overwhelming. And of course, as you were saying, when you look at these Google searches, right? You were telling me off,
Uh,
like, come on.
if people haven't read the documents, right? At least this is the very first one that came out. This is when I had all the Google searches, which we're going to get into it today. But this one was dated July 14th, 2023, the day after they arrested Rex. Folks, if you think that Rex is either totally innocent or he's being framed or whatever, you haven't read this document. You just haven't.
It is overwhelming. I
Oh
mean,
my
to
God.
say the least. It's crazy, and I love all the comments. As you guys know, I read every single comment. I like think about them and remind me. There's a couple comments that I want to get to, but where people like, I think he was framed. I'm like, guys, you got to read the bail documents.
Yeah. Yeah, and specifically the first one, right? Because there are different documents, right? This is the first bail document, then there's a superseding document, then there's another superseding document, right? And superseding just means this one now takes over for the other one. But it is important to read all of them. I believe there's three of them all told. But the first one that we're going to get into today that has all the original searches, I mean, this one maps out the burner phones, the contact information, the email addresses, all the different things that come back to all the phone numbers that belong to only one individual, including even his photographs of him going into the Manhattan. I think it was
Yeah.
a T-Mobile store, right? I mean, geez, folks.
Yeah. Now, listen, everybody, just so everybody knows, we put these bail documents in the group chat. To me, when I was reading it the first time, it was like a mystery novel. It really did a great job of laying out and answering all these questions I had for so many years. So please pick them up. Yes, it is a Pandora's box because you can go down some serious, serious rabbit holes. So,
Right. And Josh, let me interrupt you 1 second. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
please.
But for those that now have the document in their hands, if you go to page 8, you can see where Josh and I have been talking about this all along, where the district attorney has made it painfully clear that Asa was not around when these crimes were happening. And it starts on page 8 of the document. The page 8 meaning not, because sometimes in the PDFs you get like different page numbers, but the bottom of the page 8, has it 3/4 of the way down, and it just lists all the different times where she was out of town when these crimes happened.
And by the way, I just want to thank everybody, all our fans and the mods and everybody, Missy and Jen and Sinead and everybody for joining. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Joe, of course, as you know, love having you here. The other interesting thing, I just saw it and it just sparked his conversations with other sex workers, where he's saying, my wife isn't going to be home, so this is a good time. It's just, there's so much information to be gleaned. So number one, there's going to be this this suppression hearing. I will be there. You have to get up pretty early in the morning. Raul hopefully will be there. Looking forward to seeing Raul and everybody. It starts at 9:30 in the morning. So you have to get there at like 7:30. And
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So Laura Ingle will hopefully be there. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Is Asa going to be showing up? I haven't seen her in some of the hearings that I've been to.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to show up to this one. She has shown up in the past, but just a guess, I don't think so. But it's actually a cool little reunion you're going to have there. That's pretty
good. The other thing I've always noticed is, I bet you Asa wouldn't even be at some of these, but I guarantee you that the show, whatever the House of
Peacock?
Secrets, yeah, they pushed her to go. They're like, oh, you need to go to this thing so we can film you there. So I think
kind of like what my wife does to me to all these family functions.
Exactly. So, but let's not, forget that there is a media component pushing this case, and people are being played, to be honest with you. So that's another thing. We also have a court date for Andrew Dykes coming up on the 16th. Now, again, Andrew Dykes being charged with murdering Tanya, Denise Jackson. No word yet, nothing more about Tatiana, but Tanya, yes. And he originally wasn't supposed to be at this court hearing on the 16th, but now he will be there. Laura kindly let us know that he's switched attorneys. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? So we actually had reached out to his original attorney, right? We got no response. Yeah, I got no response. You know what? I mean, we're seeing some of these high profile cases where if you just take a look at, the Nick Reiner case, Alan Jackson dropping out, right, too. So listen, we can read into these things as much as we want. Sometimes there's a conflict of interest. Sometimes it's like, oh, hell no, I don't want to get involved in this, right? I mean, it's just kind of questionable about why he didn't want to do it, because I thought that the defense was going to have a relatively better time at trying to create reasonable doubt in this case than in the other cases that we've talked about with Rex Heuermann, that's for sure.
Now, I was told off the record that Tierney is very upset, off the record.
Well, you know what, though? We've kind of surmised that, right? I mean, we've been laying this out for everybody, purely guessing, but just from the point of view, and I'll harken back to the original statement that we made about when the identification of Tanya and Tatiana came out, there wasn't a representative from Suffolk County there. Now, forget about the DA himself, but there wasn't even a representative there. And to us, that spoke volumes. And then when the arrest warrant was issued for Andrew Dykes, and nothing was included from Tatiana, nothing out of Suffolk County, not even a statement, not a press release, nada. I thought that was a really bad sign. Now, once again, people can speculate as much as they want on that, but the probable cause for Tatiana doesn't exist. And you know what, though? I'm going to bring this up. During my going through all my archives, and I'll send you this a little later on because I just picked this up. This was a press release that was given by none other than District Attorney Tom Spoda on May 9th. 2011. Yeah, our favorite district attorney, lawyer, and ex-con. Uh, this document was about Valerie Mack, and this was at the time she was still Jane Doe number 6, Jessica Taylor, and then Tatiana, who was still then Baby Doe. And the ironic part on this was that on the very last page, the death of the toddler, Jane Doe 7, is likely unrelated to any of the others, which have been classified as homicides. This is what he writes on it. However, until scientists are able to extract and identify DNA profile from the toddler, we will not know for certain. So he was still talking the party line back then that these cases were not connected to the other Gilgo task force. But he also wrote that the homicides of the women identified as Miss Costello, Miss Bartholomew, Miss Barnes, and Miss Waterman appear to be related. The homicidal deaths of Miss Taylor and Jane Doe number 6, which ends up being Valerie Mack, appear to be related to each other, but not necessarily to the other 4. Which we know he's wrong about that, too.
You know what the hell he was talking about. Okay.
John Doe number 8, the Asian male, appears to be unrelated to all of the bodies. But again, we won't know until we identify him.
Look, I remember we were going through all the archive bits for Monster, right? Because I was trying to lay out, like, first it was 2 killers. And it's all in the press. First he says 2 killers, then he's like 3 killers. It's like Count Dracula, you know, and then he's like 4 killers, you know, and like at one time he was believing 4 serial murders going on, and it's just ridiculous. So
well, sorry, I just want to throw this in there too. There was one other thing on this document. He also wrote in this, he said, this is about Asian male Doe. He said he died a violent death. The cause of death is radically different from all the other remains found to date.
I.e. beating?
We don't know for sure, right? I mean, could be blunt force trauma, like you said. It could be, there's been speculation, rumor, I even heard of a gunshot.
Yes,
and all
I
the
heard
other
that
stuff in
rumor
there.
too, but I think that was.
Yeah, I don't believe that one.
Okay. The other interesting thing is we also learn with the Andrew Dykes case that there was he was indicted by a grand jury.
Yes.
So
ergo, no probable cause affidavit.
Which in my mind was like, whoa, it's not just one person making a decision, it's a grand jury of people making that decision.
Which brings me up to the whole joke, right? The old saying that you can indict a ham sandwich. So
right.
For those that don't know what a grand jury is, grand jury in New York State is made up of 16 to 23 people, and they only hear felony cases. And it's held at the local Supreme Court. And all they determines if there's enough evidence to move forward with a felony. That's really all their job is. This is not like, conviction, execution, none of that stuff. It just says, yeah, there's enough evidence to go forward.
Right.
And it is seen as a prosecutorial tool, meaning the only people in the room are the prosecutor, the police, and that's it. There's no defense attorneys. There's no nothing. So when the saying comes out, you can indict a ham sandwich, it's pretty true. That's why when you get a grand jury that they can't indict somebody, you really had nothing, which makes me a little nervous because sometimes district attorneys use these grand juries by like a proxy, meaning I'm not going to put myself out on a limb. I'll send it to a grand jury, and if they convict, if they indict, then I'll say, oh, okay, I got the indictment. If it fails, I'm going to say, wait, listen, the grand jury said there was evidence there.
Okay, so why would sometimes they use a grand jury and sometimes they not use a grand jury?
Because understand something, the mentality of district attorneys is they're not going to put anything to trial that they think they can't win. So if they're going to lose, they want to have somebody to blame. That's basically what that's my opinion, of course. They're going to deny that. They're going to deny that. But listen, I've dealt with so many district attorneys from the People's Republic of the Bronx. I could tell you from experience, they will not bring a case to trial that they think they can lose. Simple as that.
So it actually is it's a signifier of even less confidence.
I believe so. Yes, that's my opinion. That this is a. I think this case is a risky event. Well, I hope I'm wrong. But it's a risky event.
I like when we speak offline and you start to rant and rave. He's like, this case, it smells. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's like,
well, like I said, there's certain things, in public and especially online, you want to avoid certain words and this and that. And I'm not making any accusations that I think that the district attorney is trying to avoid doing work. Ann Donnelly has done a great job. This case, however, I have lots of issues with. And the main issue is something that we broke right from the beginning, because if you recall, before we even knew what they came out with about how they were going to indict him, we spoke about if DNA inside the victim was going to be the only thing that they have, it's a very weak case because they have a relationship, they have a child in common. He's going to say, well, why did you lie? Well, because look at the position I'm in now. I told you the truth. Now look at me, right? So,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people who can identify with the fact that they had a relationship that was long-term, maybe even child in common. Then 6 months, a year, 2 months, 2 years later, they get back together, they hook up, things just don't work out again, and they go their separate ways. It happens for many, many people. And you got to remember, those 12 jurors, I guarantee you, there's at least one of them that this has happened in their lifetime.
Right. Well, unfortunately, he did not, when she disappeared, he did not, say anything. I mean, who knows? We haven't walked in anybody's shoes, but it's not good, but it doesn't make him a killer. So now let's move on to Google searches. So
Yes.
these are just a few of the what we believe to be probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Google searches. They remember the DA had a whole list of Google searches. Why did he choose these? There are clues that he is listing, that he is showing the public. He's showing them a little bit of his cards when he's putting in these Google searches, correct?
Right. Yes, definitely. And for those that want to follow along, they start on page 18 of the document that was shared with you.
Right. So, and by the way, I'm not going to go via the document. I'm going to go just via some stuff, however we could look at it. Again, slight trigger warning, folks. There are some words here that are not pretty. We are going to try not to say those words, but if you are triggered, please refrain. There's a couple words that we can't say. So I think one of the things that we're going to use is we're going to use the numbering system so that we can talk about it here. And I'm going to bring it up and show it on my screen so everybody can see it. Stand by.
I mean, one thing that people, when you're looking at this list, I mean, you could see the variations in what this guy was doing. It's like off the charts from one end to the next.
Yeah.
And it's not even it's just one extreme to the next. I think that would be the best way to to describe it.
Joe, I am not seeing a couple of the transsexual searches, which I thought were important, but let's start with these, right? This is
Okay.
start easy. So Tierney was trying to basically show that Rex allegedly was doing forensic countermeasures. Basically,
Yes.
he was trying to look at what the law enforcement was doing. We also know that he was going actually to the website. That was one of the reasons they created that website, was because they were scraping for chances that the killer would be there, and then they were looking for the amount of time somebody would go, et cetera, et cetera. But here we go. So why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? I thought that was very interesting, by the way.
Yes. These are on page 19, though, by the way. So this is a different page than the one I gave you.
Right. We're going to start early. Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Long Island serial killer phone call. Now, the phone call, I assume that's the phone call made to Amanda. Is that correct?
I would surmise the same thing, right? Because that was the big news at the time, where the sister was called inside of Manhattan. That's the one that really triggered the Times Square stuff, the Penn Station stuff, and I think that gives us the Massapequa box too.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me, if you look at 2022, he's searching all the way up until the arrest, which is kind of crazy. 2022, 2023, map of all known serial killers, unsolved serial killer cases, 11 currently active serial killers, 8 terrifying active serial killers we can't find. By the way, the craziest thing is like I have all the same lists on
Yeah.
my research that I was doing.
Well,
But
you know what's interesting about this list too that we just kind of glossed over it. But number 8, the serial killers by state, 2023.
mhm,
If you go by it, I always thought California would have, because they have the most people, right? You would have the most, what do you call it? But it's actually New York has had the most recorded serial killers, and quite frankly, 1994 Long Island doesn't help.
yeah,
So
4
yeah,
4
so
active serial
yeah,
killers.
so New York actually leads all the states. So there was an article just recently, and I think as recent as 2024 from Newsweek, if I remember correctly, shows New York at the top list of the still for
Wow.
serial killers.
So, but number 14 is where I was like, OMG, Don Bitroff. So, what does it mean that he's searching John Bitroff?
Well, like I said, this was the Sandra Castilla case. As far as I'm concerned, he knows he was responsible for that. John Bitroff, up until this point, was still getting "quote unquote" credit from it for doing it, and maybe this had to be an ego issue where he was not getting the uh, whatever you want to call it, the accolades or respect for it. I don't know how these guys actually think, and only Rex could actually tell us. But if you're asking me what I would think, and that would be it, that he was a little pissed off that he was not getting his due accolades
Credit.
for this case.
Well, here's the problem. What I really want to see is the date on this because we said this before. Did he search for Colleen? Did he somehow in Newsday see Colleen McNamee's the report about her body being found, and that gave him the reason to go out in 1993, 2 weeks later, and kill Sandra Castilla? I mean, uh, uh, otherwise, it's an amazing coincidence. Again, as we said before, in November, Bitroff kills Colleen McNamee. 2 weeks later, Rex Heuermann kills allegedly Sandra Castilla, and allegedly his first crime. So, like, what is it in November of 1993 that possesses these two men to go kill these two women? So,
And if
I
you
don't know.
remember from last week's show when we had our question and answer on this, I said and we were asked, what question will we ask him? This was the question: did you intentionally do this to throw off investigators or kind of frame John Bitroff?
Well, it worked.
It
It
certainly
worked for
did.
a long time.
It
So,
certainly did.
so that was what I wanted to see. I was wanting to see. I mean, can you imagine if he was at the trial, the John Bitroff trial? I was there, but like, that would be amazing. So, John Bitroff was really the thing that was so crazy. By the way, Amanda Bartholomew, of course, Melissa's sister, he called her, right? So that's why the redacted name of the relative of Melissa was so interesting. But Megan Waterman, do we know if he called Megan Waterman's sister, mother?
The only thing I can think of is that question would be yes, right? Why else would you redact the name of an innocent person? You could bring him in there, and we do know about Amanda because it was in the newspaper. I believe they only refer to her as the sister, right? In regards to,
Mm,
for the New York, there was a New York Post article. Well, maybe they had her named. I don't remember. We're talking a real long time ago now.
yeah, I mean, I went and visited her and sat down with her and played her. We played her a tape, and she was pretty vocal and she's a very smart individual. But my point being is that's never been made public. It's never been made public about him contacting a relative of Megan Waterman. So that's interesting. By the way, on our Patreon, if anybody is interested, we have our interview with Sarah Carnes, who we believe he called regarding Maureen Brainerd Barnes. You can get that on Patreon. That was a crazy interview, and nobody had known that he called her, and he mentioned a couple things. I'm always, I don't want to say skeptical, but trust but verify type of situation. But he mentioned, first of all, he got the tattoo on her correct, and then secondly, he kept saying that she was in a whorehouse in Queens, and the Queens thing was so interesting, and mentioning the whorehouse. So
Well, there's other ties to Queens in this indictment too, right? Where you have the email address attached to an Astoria zip code. So
Yeah,
there's something, the Springfield, I guess maybe Springfield Boulevard. He's got
yeah.
the Astoria zip code with the Springfield AOL address. So there's something cooking out of Queens for sure here. Something down deep that.
Yeah, I gotta say it's interesting only because I remember speaking to Peter Brent so many years a long time ago, and he was always like Queens, Queens, Queens. I don't know why he kept saying Queens, but then when Senator Sarah Carnes came in, we were like Queens. So Queen was always a big thing that we mentioned in the killing season, and I'm trying to think about if there was any other reason why. So
Well,
that's
in personal experience, I worked in the 110 precinct squad. That was
yeah,
my first detective squad I worked in at a Corona. And on Roosevelt Avenue were so many houses of prostitution. I
yeah,
mean, even to this day, there'll be people standing on the corner when you get off the train. So, I mean, and the Long Island Railroad is not too far from there. So you can actually take the Long Island Railroad to Roosevelt Avenue over there after a short walk. I used to do it sometimes. I used to, in bad weather, I would take the train and then walk to work, which is only like 2 blocks.
yeah,
But even when I was walking there, people would try to hand me the cards, chicas, and they used to hand you the cards when
yeah.
you're trying to get there. And then I would take the cards and hand them off to the intel guy, and he'd write the reports and says, and try to figure it out.
Oh, we when we were doing a lot of our work, I remember when we interviewed Khalil, we went to Hunts Point because he was right around Hunts Point. So
Yeah, I was up in the Bronx.
yeah, it was interesting. Hunts Point and then Long Island, man, Long Island City. Woof, you know,
Yeah,
it's
right
just like
under the bridge there, right
oh
under the
man,
59th Street Bridge.
and it's like all the cars that pull in. Like if you don't have never seen this before, it's worth checking out because it is pretty open air market type of thing.
Yeah, it's calmed down a lot
Has
over the
it?
last. Yeah, it's calmed down a lot because I actually because that's part of the 114 over there. And we had when I was assigned to Queens Internal Affairs, our office turned out of right underneath the 59th Street Bridge. So
Yeah.
we were like around the corner from the stuff. So anytime we'd go out for lunch or dinner, we'd have to drive through these areas. And we were never fooling anybody because you have a black Impala.
They knew you were a cop.
You might as well just put police car on the side of it. And we would see these women, scantily clad all hours of the day, all hours of the night, all types of weather.
Mm.
And
Vicky
you
Callie,
know,
thank you so much mentioning the killing season. Much appreciated. All right, well, let's now look at our next one. This is a little bit rougher, folks. So again, if you're triggered, let's just please hide your eyes.
there was only one thing, Josh, before we get into
Yeah,
this list that I definitely wanted to talk about that we kind of glossed over.
sure.
And I believe the one here, it was number 20. You don't have to go back to it. I'll just read it.
Okay.
Cops launch Gilgo Beach homicide task force. That's the one I
Wow.
think he finally. That's when I think he finally, said, "Oh boy, here we go. Let's see what happens." Right.
Yeah.
So, like you said, yes, the dates among all these searches were really important because I believe that was announced in February, right? Not too long after Rodney Harrison takes over. I
That's
think it came
correct.
out to February of maybe 2022, maybe. I don't know. But I thought that was kind of interesting.
And as we know, just how many February and then literally by March. By March, they had a suspect.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's amazing what happens when you digitize your files.
Digitize your files,
Yeah.
establish a task force where there's a police executive who has not only bought into the system, but is also pushing it. I think this is the role model, if that's or I don't know what the exact term I'm looking for, but this is the blueprint for how investigations in these old cases should be done, as far as I'm concerned. And I think you agree. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Josh, but I think this is the way to go.
Are you kidding me? All right. So let's go to this list again, folks. Please be careful. And looking at this list, there's some stuff we're not going to talk about, but let's look at number one. I don't think we've really understood the extent to which Rex, quote unquote, played in the BDSM community. Now, we are not vilifying the BDSM community at all. And we've spoken to a lot of people about it. We understand. Very interesting. The BDSM community, what is so interesting is they enjoy the consent, right? It's about two consenting adults. With Rex, allegedly, what we learned from folks like Joni Johnson is that it's the lack of consent. This is what sexual sadists like, the lack of consent, being terrified,
Yes.
being scared when these things are happening.
And it comes out in a lot of these searches.
Yeah, right. But the fact that he's searching Mistress Long Island, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't been to a Mistress in Long Island, but that is BDSM theoretically related. Is that correct?
It might be. To be honest with you, Josh, that area of BDSM is really nothing that I've kind of researched in that respect. But the word mistress itself, I mean, just corresponds to somebody who is cheating on their spouse. I mean, I think we could just look at it as the basic kind of thing at the very least. You know, it's ironic is that the things that you flagged, the same numbers, I flagged, but with just a dot. Well, that's pretty interesting. I'm looking at that going, holy cow, we picked the same ones.
There you go. Well, we've gotten some Tanya, I think from Australia, she knows the BDSM community and has given us some indications of some information. I really appreciate that. There's been a lot of comments that have come up. There's been a couple people, mistresses, doms, what have you, who have said that Rex frequented them. So I find that to be very interesting. They also said that he maybe went to a couple of the strip clubs and that the girls always saw him as a whale, where a guy's spending a lot of money. So, So folks, if you believe that you have come across Rex as a sex worker, a dom, or in the clubs, please get back to me because I really want to dig into that and see where that goes. See if we can find out any other information. Now, going down, of course, there's a lot of very graphic things that we don't want to talk about in terms of the pornography, but it's obviously related to torture, which is tragic.
Before you get further down the list, I just want to hit number 2, right? The mature escorts, Manhattan, which is not any of the things that we've seen of any of the victims, right? They're all young women,
right?
In their 20s, and that was, to me, it was kind of like jumped off the page, number 2, and I don't know if they put this in any number order or search order, or they just threw it together. I don't know if this has anything to do with the district attorney just listing these kind of things and just like how they came up in the investigation, maybe because these were all tied to another fake account of Thomas Hawk, HAWK. So,
right. So, and just comments coming through. Yeah, mistress is a dom. So he's going to a dom. Now, I assume he's wanting to be, bottomed or what have you, but is he also asking if they will engage in the opposite? That would be my question. Whether he was trying to find somebody who he could go a little further with on his end. So let's move on to the other thing that was very, very interesting here, which is Asian Twink. Everybody has asked for years, Asian Doe, is he part of the group? And when Tierney put number 12 in, I think we all went, oh my God.
We actually did. We actually think we were live going through this. And at the time when this was coming out, and we zoned in on that and said, boy, is this an indication or a pointing to Asian male Doe's remains? And that's why I read Thomas Spoda's comments on this case on 2011, because I knew you were going to pick that one, even though we didn't discuss ahead of time. So I knew you were going to pick that one.
So, but the question is it theoretically, to some people's minds, from a signature MO, what have you, victimology, it doesn't make sense. He's only gone after one type of victim, small, petite females, whether Caucasian, whether Indian. Sandra Castillo was, Indian. So that is the question. But when you see Asian Twink, it kind of blows your mind. I asked Joni Johnson about it, and she said, look, it's for the sexual sadist. And remember, sexual sadist is very different. That's one of the things I recently learned. It's not about necessarily the type. It's about the action. So it may not matter who is begging not to be hurt. It could be a man, it could be a woman, it doesn't matter what nationality. So, and, it says tied up. So that's such an interesting and important indication.
Well, and if number one, the mistress part has to do with going to a dominatrix, right? Then something where he's involved with that kind of behavior also could then tie into number 12 for sure, right? So where he's, going both routes, so to speak.
Yeah. Very interesting. I'm just reading some of the comments here. No doubt he played submissive, to find vulnerable victims. Agreed there. No mention of a switch, but again, we don't have all of them because there's a whole bunch of transsexual ones. We were going to do a whole thing in the Monster series about what this meant, whether Rex was completely straight or whether he was not. It seems to me, obviously, that, and somebody said this here, and I agree, that no older heterosexual male is going to pull up the term Asian twink. Now that may not mean he actually has sex. It could, again, just be sexual sadism. So that's the issue.
Well, you would also have to know about those things too, right? In the respect that
Yeah.
you're familiar with that verbiage.
Yes.
I mean, and if you just look at some of these things, the verbiage is really bad in a lot of these. And that one specifically, I don't think, unless that's something you're into, that you even know about that term.
It's probably, again, there. I mean, again, he is very, very familiar with the sex worker industry. He's trolling all day, all along. So that's how he would know. But, we always thought that originally that, and this was what Dormer had told us, that by definition of the beating, say that Asian twink had, that he was surprised, that Rex was theoretically surprised when he picked up this individual. But if he's looking up Asian twink, he wouldn't be surprised. This was this was a specific type of kink that he went out and looked for. So no, he may not have been surprised. Why the beating? I don't know, but I think it's very interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's something that, a lot of people have said, right? So he, in the case of, if he was responsible for, let's just say, the murder of Asian male Doe, that yes, he got more than he bargained for in the transaction. And then there could be the anger, right? Because, like I said before, I'll just read this again. He died violently. The cause of death is radically different from all the others found to this day. So there's a lot of rage there. But it also could be that rage comes from himself saying, I can't believe I did this, right?
Yes.
This is not who I am. This is really what I'm not into, and I'm angry at myself and this guy. And he focuses that rage on the victim now.
Yeah.
Which I have seen.
Yeah.
I have seen. See, in Corona, we had a lot of experience with this community in regards to violence, in regards to, with other people picking up transgender sex workers and violence. I have witnessed this, and we had a number of homicide cases that revolved around exactly just that. So I'm not really talking out of my hat here. I've seen it happen.
Proctorgate sent, thank you very much, Proctorgate. Were her initials in the peach tattoo? You're talking about Tanya? Was that Tanya's initials in the peach tattoo? I don't think so. I think it was somebody else's initials. We'll have to go back and 100% confirm, but I don't think so. So again, Asian twink, you wouldn't look it up after the fact. You would look it up beforehand. So that changed the narrative. Not just could it have been Rex victims, but also it was something that he wasn't surprised. He went out and searched for it. Yes, the beating was gay rage, whatever you want to call it, but that is very interesting. which then allows you to take a look at other individuals like Sugar Bear. Remember, we talked about Sugar Bear. Like, does it make sense? Well, it starts to make a little bit more sense.
Well, and I think I think in the next couple of shows, I think we're going to start getting involved in some of the tangential cases and some of these things, right? The Sandra Petty's article, the Forgotten, that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just so many cases that need attention from law enforcement that may or may not be involved with Rex. Just because it doesn't have to do with Rex, that doesn't mean that the task force can't be working on these things.
Robin, likely switching things up to prevent boredom. It didn't matter as much as the packaging, which I think is completely right. It's the fact that it's just against their will. It doesn't matter what form it takes, or sure, he can have a preference, but likes to switch it up. Of course, obviously, folks, there's a lot of young individuals here. So
right. Well, one of the things that jumps off the page for me on this, Josh, when you take a look at these, he is gender specific on some, and many of them he's not.
Right.
So I mean, if you just, we're not going to read it out loud, but if you just take a look at number 13, the one right after the Asian twink one, all right, no gender specific here.
Right. It's just
so, and then, but if you go 2 down at 15, he mentions girl, right? So there's to me, I think that means something because
it's a wide open.
Yeah, well, one thing I've learned though in law enforcement is that when people speak, they tend to leave out certain facts, but when they write subconsciously, they leave clues a lot of times. And those clues, I mean, you could read into them, of course, as much as you want. Someone on the other end of this thing could be looking at this and say, Joe, hey, I can see what you mean, but I don't think that has anything to do with it, right? That's fine. I mean, we all have our opinions on certain things, but I've actually seen people say one thing and then write something else.
Of course. Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. By the way, I think it is Sandra Petty is this week where we interviewed Sandra Petty with regards to the Forgotten for all the other folks. She's a Newsday reporter. She did a long-form investigative journalist piece called The Forgotten, which looks at theoretically 100 or so victims on Long Island of violence that never has been that we're just getting into, I should say. She got the list with the help of Tom Hargrove, Murder Accountability Project. Joe, you're on the board of the Murder Accountability Project.
Right. And I was actually in that article too, because she interviewed me for that article. Yes. And actually I spoke to Sandra this week because I wanted to try to get her on the show, but she's in the Bahamas. Can you believe that? The nerve.
Wow. Well, she did our interview and then she went to the Bahamas. Okay.
What a nerve.
There you go. The other thing, calling your attention, there has been a lot of talk about a predilection for children. All the girls being very petite. We were thinking, was that more of a domination? Was that more of a being able to control the victims? But at the same time, when you look at this list, there's kids on this list.
Yes, and that's the reason why I would, like, if I was, let's say, on the task force or I had actually any say in this, you would have to look at this list. And I'm sure that they said this, that we have to expand our age parameters for not only missing children, but all races that could have been attributed to this guy. Because when you start looking at some of the ages of what he was looking for, if you look at number 7, 17, and 18, I think that's the youngest out of all of them. So to me, that then opens up a whole bunch of other unrelated, quote unquote, cases that you can have to look into. So I would be expanding my search. Sorry, I'd be expanding my search.
No. I was just
way into the young kids for this.
So we always thought the petite part of it was about controlling the victim because he's like hit harder, like controlling the victim, being able to torture them, and a bunch of horrible things that we don't want to talk about. But oh my God, could they be petite because they're closer to his preferred age range?
Well, either that or the feeling he gets of the domination. I mean, if you look at number 3 and number 4, right, the word begging.
Yeah. Ugh, gross.
And if you start, if you now go back to his planning document, and he talks about rest and more fun and tying people up. And then if you look at number 6, right, it has the word we know what that word is. And
Yep.
you start looking into some of these things, and as you get further and further down the list, you see more and more disturbing adjectives and verbs being used, and you kind of start questioning, like, how far does this guy have really gone? Is this just fantasy, or was this stuff that he really did and acted upon, and now we really don't know exactly what he really could have been capable of doing? And
Yeah.
I'm more for the latter type of thing from the investigative standpoint. Make sure that this never happened, because if it did, boy, oh boy, we have much bigger problems to deal with. Because even I spoke to Tom Hargrove about this. I mean, and when we talk at the Murder Accountability Project, we
Yeah.
zoned in on a different age group. But if you open that age group up to what we're looking at here, that number expands probably 3 times as much.
Well, look, you got, number 2, you got mature escorts, and on the porn site, sorry, the pornography site, you're looking at something different. By the way, folks, just a couple shouts out. Lulu Loves Radio had, thank you so much, $9.99, totally much appreciated, $10 super chat. We've got a couple new members here. Wonderful Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I got to check that out. Actually, I have been looking a little bit at
Jill,
that.
that's Jill, yeah.
Oh, Jill,
Jill,
new
I know
member.
Jill. Yep, and Lulu, thank you very much for that super. For Josh, we really appreciate your support. Lulu has been there from us, for me, and for you, Josh, from the beginning.
Yep.
So
Cancer Free 09, ding ding, new member. Thank you very much. Really. Oh wait, Mrs. Cincy John, is that Cincinnati? I wonder. Cool. Thank you very much. So wonderful you guys are all here. Thank you so much. I know we're talking about some serious stuff, but it is serious and it's important. And if you want clues as to know what is going on, these are it. Now, there's a couple of others. By the way, depressed. This number 23, depressed. That is depressing. Well, oh God.
but it's also about manipulation, right? When I saw that, when you have somebody who's down on their luck, they're easier to manipulate, they're easier to entice into doing things. And, we have this guy here, allegedly has not only partaken in just the searches of this stuff, and I kind of question, a lot of people say, oh, things are flagged on the internet and blah 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 blah. If this guy was searching for all this stuff and nobody ever found him on, nobody ever flagged it. I mean, geez, if there was a flag, I mean, there should be so many red flags coming out of this guy's IP address. It should look like China.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief.
Well, now here's where I started to think the old janitors, right? Ugh, bad. But if you go and for those who've listened to Monster or listened to John Parisi's interview where he talks about Rex stealing stuff out of girls' lockers, like it starts to kind of make a lot of sense. And then you're like, janitor, school, a lot of rape, a lot of SA fantasies, with younger folks. And it's like, oh my God, it really does go back to that childhood, as Joni Johnson said, if you watch that interview we did with her, that this is all forming, he's going through puberty around this time. It's all forming right around this time that he's seeing this violent pornography for the first time. And it's all kind of clicking. Basically, he has revenge fantasies and then he sees this violent pornography right at the same time, and the two become sexualized. Those fantasies become sexualized. Also, he has a high level of fantasy because of what was happening at home. You're not really interacting with your father who's beating you on a healthy basis. So you're fantasizing. You're like, oh, if I could just leave, or if I could go do this. Really fascinating when you speak to Joni Johnson and what you learn about this.
Yeah, I love Joni. She's actually, no fluff kind of thing. She just gets right to the point and she knows what she's talking about.
She's like the Bené Brown of serial murder.
Yeah, no, and she's a sweetheart. I met her in person, and I've also had her on the show. Yeah, I've also had her on the show. So she's a sweetheart, and she's no nonsense kind of thing. And I mean, folks, that when you look at this list of 30 things, 3/4 of them have to do with very young people, and that to me is very concerning for a lot of things.
Absolutely. All right.
Not just viewing things online.
Yeah, it's. I'll show another list, but oof, it's tough stuff. And I remember the first time seeing this, and I was just, It's really,
Well,
really,
yeah.
really.
While you're pulling up that, I'll just
Yeah,
say, on the very next page after those searches, the district attorney goes into that same email of Thomas Hawk about how he was listening to podcasts and documentaries and reading newspapers. I mean, that's where all the things come in. And if anybody didn't think that the Springfield was him, that's when they found the famous selfie attached
yeah,
to that to the Springfield email address of the
yeah,
at the AOL.
yeah.
And
Ugh.
also on the document on May 19th, 2023, just a little less than 2 months before they arrest him, he was in the Manhattan, I guess was it T-Mobile? He was in the Manhattan, just at a Midtown Manhattan cell phone store,
Yeah.
buying more minutes for his burner phones.
All right. So if that wasn't terrifying enough, we'll give you another terrifying. Yes, I am wearing flannel instead of a sweater today. Glad my wardrobe is so exciting.
I don't. There's two things I don't talk about: people's hairdos or their wardrobe,
Thanks.
because I don't have any hair, and I just if I could wear. I told my wife that when I die and she buries me in the suit, I'm going to come back and haunt her.
Well,
Right? Because it's just I wasn't the guy to wear a suit. I wasn't the kind of person that lit up the room when he entered. It don't be giving me that garbage.
well, you got the memo about red, so thank you very much. All right. Ugh, autopsy photos.
Yeah,
Uh, 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 what? Jeez, Louise, what is up with these guys? The hung
yeah. You got to be
terrifying,
careful of these things too.
but it's important because if we know what happened in that room, this is what we're talking about. It's Tierney's putting this stuff in for a reason.
Yes, and remember that there are rules that the district attorney can't say things in public, can't try his case in public, unlike the defense that they can do these things. So he has a way of getting these things into this indictment in the probable cause affidavit and not being in violation of not giving somebody a fair trial. So and I folks, these aren't the only ones. There's going to be a lot more when the trial starts. These are the ones that they wanted you to know up front.
Right. I mean, basically, he's presenting his case, correct?
Yes, he's basically saying this is just a teaser, but this is what, coupled with what we know, coupled with what he searched for, and coupled with the evidence that we do have, including the DNA, this is what he was, capable of.
Right. By the way, we didn't mention it before, but it said black. And so, again, it's not if somebody's like, well, this victim versus that victim, tragically, he was equal opportunity.
Not only that, but I think that if anybody, when you're discussing this, or I guess either profiling or a victimology, I don't think you can just tie it down to one single race.
No, you can't. I mean, look what we're talking about here. So I am afraid to ask, but what is Wooden Pony? Anybody? Bueller?
I mean, I could take a guess.
I guess I could take a guess too, but I'd rather not.
Yeah, me too.
But
right there, that one strikes me. 14, I was going to say medieval.
What is that?
I don't know, but the second word is something really important, because on number 14, because if you look at the list here, the adjectives of or verbs of begging, bruised, hung. I'm trying to make sure I can crying. I'm using the words that we can say here.
I mean, it's
right.
Yeah.
But even if you look at number 17, he's looking for victims who have spoken out about their trauma. I mean, how sick are we really talking about here? That somebody would want to revel or just get involved with somebody else's trauma and pain. And I've said this a number of times. And actually, I think I even included this in my textbook on investigations when I said, out of all the crimes that happen, I know we have in a society, we say murder is the worst. However, the second one, the SAs, the victim has to live on with that. And I have spoken to many of the victims, and many of them have said, I wish he would have just done the ultimate, because the living over and over every time I closed my eyes. Or if it would have been much better off if he would have just done the first thing. And
So
and
that's I'm sorry. It's horrible. It's horrible. Um, by the way, Pony BDSM furniture. Thanks, Jen. Items like a Wani wooden pony, specifically designed as functional piece of sexual furniture with various attachment points for restraints and other gear. The
yeah,
pony
that's what I
term is,
figured it was.
yeah, the
It's
pony
like
term
like
is
a
also,
rocking horse,
yeah, is
a
also
rocking horse with
associated
a vertical thing.
subculture, pony play or pet play, where the person adopts the role of the pony and is trained by the handler, specialized gear like harnesses, big
That's
gags.
another that's
Yeah,
another thing too. Yeah.
right. Judas
Yeah, we
Cradle,
don't
not a
recommend you
rocking
guys
horse, more like
Googling
a
any of
Judas
these things.
Cradle.
We don't recommend you Googling any of these things.
Let me tell you something. I looked up old janitor porn just to see what came up, and so, but
Jeez.
the other thing is that is important to me is 19. There
Yep,
are
because then
people
this confirms what you had said before.
there are people out there who have come across Rex and who have done sex play with him, not knowing what was going on. And those people, if we can find out who they are, I think it would be interesting to really try and find out from the proverbial horse's mouth, what his predilections were.
Yeah, honestly, I think that the district attorney has had a couple of these people come forward.
Must
They
have.
just haven't made it. They just haven't made it public because of obvious reasons. Because first of all, anybody who's been involved in a situation like this, you're protected by the shield laws, and you can't call people's names and all the other things unless, of course, the individual themselves says it's okay and signs an affidavit and says that I'm willing to have my face and name out in public because you're protected. So I think that they've had some of these things, but like I said, if they had these relationships with him that didn't rise to a level of a crime, then it's just something that they would just confirm in their thing of list of that kind of stuff. Will we see them testify in court? No.
Right. Unnecessary, right?
Right. There's no reason to drag somebody through this, and not only bring up some horrific event, because I could tell you, I can imagine there are some. I just can't say. I'm just gonna say people because I think it could be men involved in this too
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of have survivor's guilt,
Right.
and like they were with this guy, and they realized how things could have turned for the worse, and it's a thing that you have to think about and you say to yourself, if I was in this position and they were doing this, I mean, the chances that they take by doing this stuff, I mean, this is it. I mean, and we know that these guys pick on this demographic because it's so easy to do so.
Yeah. Do you think there's survivors of that? Could be. I mean,
Oh, I guarantee you there are.
yeah.
I guarantee you. And I'm surprised that we haven't had any more of that kind of confirmation coming out. But I think the district attorney was trying to keep a lid on some of those things because I believe they did ask for people to come forward. But, we didn't want this to turn into a circus.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
Oh, there's that
all
list I
very.
was talking about.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. The FBI cellular analysis survey team. Now, what's interesting is this team was brought in 2012. They were part of the group that the FBI team that basically got to Massapequa. And I guarantee you, there was a dude from the FBI who drove around Massapequa putting the box together back in 2012, mind you. Look, let me ask you a question. If those detectives had shared the avalanche clue with the FBI, first of all, would they? Of course, right? If you have a team meeting.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the FBI is not the lead investigator in the case, right? So they still wouldn't be able to act upon anything other than trying to find out the information to do it. The
Well,
$1 million question is here, like who up above did or didn't know, right? You've talked about you and I have talked about this. You had Bob Kolker on the other day, which if
sure.
people didn't see that Bob Kolker interview, they should go after this over, go to Sinister and watch the Bob Kolker who wrote Lost Girls. He's a phenomenal guy. I love Bob.
Yeah.
But he kind of dances around a little bit, right? Like what people knew and what people didn't know. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of us find it hard to believe that the chief of detectives wasn't kept up to speed in a lot of this stuff, or he even asking, "Hey, what's going on with this?" I mean, yeah, you just have the biggest case in New York City history, in New York State history, and you're not on top of this. I find it difficult to believe. I'm
Me
sorry.
too. I mean, that was my whole point. I mean, that's why I was trying to prove it. But my point was, you've got an FBI guy driving around Massapequa in 2012, literally driving around and trying to put together a box. And he drives by Rex's house because, as we know, on Google in 2011, the Chevy Avalanche is sitting right outside. I mean, can you imagine? Like, that could have happened, right? If that information had been kicked up, and the FBI knew about it, like, wait a second, I passed a Chevy Avalanche the other day in Massapequa. Zoink,
Well,
Scoop.
I don't know. I don't know if you have Rex's house, a photo of it, but the driveway is so small and full of stuff, and the Avalanche is a huge truck. That thing had to be out on the street all the time.
Oh, right. All the time, not just once.
Exactly.
Oh,
So talk about a sore thumb sticking out
yeah.
in regards to this thing. And here's where, you know what though, and not for nothing, Josh. People, I know that there might be even some cops that are going to say, Joe, like, come on, what are you talking about? This would have been something that if I had any say in the matter, right? I would have released this information about the Green Avalanche to the public.
Oof.
And saying, guy, we're looking for a Green Avalanche in Massapequa Park. It's as simple as that. Because I can tell you something right now. The guy across the street who doesn't really like Rex, even like, like I'm staring at one right now.
Totally. Be like, right, because he brought down the property values in the whole neighborhood, so they would have been calling.
If you don't, listen, I grew up on Long Island. I know how people are about their properties. I mean, we got people out there with scissors, cutting the grass. And there's a house like his on every block on Long Island. And I can tell you right now, they're in the crosshairs of every neighbor. And
I'm like, why won't they clean up their house? That pisses me off so much. I spend so much time on my lawn.
Right, and you even threatened to go to the HOA if you had one, right?
Exactly.
This is why you live in an HOA. But a situation like that, I think, would have uncovered it.
You're totally right. You would have nailed it in 2 seconds.
Yeah, because Vinny Boombot sitting on the corner of Massapequa Park is like the old guy who's been smoking a cigar, sitting there looking at this place for the last 30 years.
This guy doesn't even clean up his lawn. His house is a mess. He scares my kids.
I'm looking right at his truck right now. Hey, yo.
Joey Buttafuoco. Hey.
Oh, God. Speaking of Massapequa, too, right? I think that was Massapequa, too.
Was Joey Buttafuoco in Massapequa?
I think it was, yes. I think that's where he and Mary Jo were living. Somebody look that up for us. Look up Mary Jo Buttafuoco and I believe it's Massapequa. It might not be Massapequa Park. No, I'm not.
Wow. Yeah, but oh my God, you totally just nailed that for me. You're totally right. If they had said we're looking for anybody who drives a Massapequa, like in 2 seconds, they would have been like, ding, 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 this guy. Oh my God.
Because there were people on that block that didn't like him just because his house looked like a whatever, right? We'll leave the adjectives out. But
all right, Joe, once again, it has been a really interesting and fascinating. It's amazing how things just continue to keep coming up. I don't know what we're going to talk about next, but it's on your channel.
Right. Next week at 2 p.m. we'll be on my channel. Like I said, maybe we'll get into some more of the unforgotten list. I think that might be a good idea to start expanding to other possible victims, especially now that people have watched this show or are going to watch this show. I think we need to also expand our searches into the younger age ranges and start looking at some of the missing persons cases in NamUs and some of the other things and start looking at them and saying, not that they are him, but these are potential cases that we need to start looking at, and they need to get the same attention, not only from the media, but also from law enforcement.
Right. So even, and we know, right? even if we come in and just talking about them just a little bit helps, you know.
Yeah, well, we can't. Unfortunately, Sandra was so in depth in that article. I mean, it lasted for pages in the newspaper. We can't get into all of them. It might be a two-parter. It might be like we did with Mindhunter. You know, part one on my channel, part two on your channel, and we can pick out the cases that we think that could be attributed, or at least looked at further. But I
Mhm.
think that it is also a good thing to start looking at other cases outside of Rex, particularly from Long Island, because I think so many people now are familiar with the story.
And as in our closing, just to confirm, Massapequa's wonderful legacy, Buttafuoco is indeed from Massapequa.
Told you.
And folks,
Amy Fisher, Mary Jo Buttafuoco.
right? If you don't know the Buttafuoco story,
Oh my God, what a horror show!
go look at that. Another wonderful Long Island story. Howard Stern, I think, had like years of material on that one.
Rightly so.
Yeah, Joe, thank you very much. Jen, thank you very much. Missy, Sinead, everybody, all the mods, folks, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Hope you found today's show informative. Please go to Sinister. We're trying to get to 10,000. I think we can do it.
Yeah, let's get there, folks.
Joe, Jen gave me a prediction January 15th. And I was like, I don't know, Jen. I don't know. So please.
Well, what's the number now? What's the number now?
I don't know. I got to see. Jen, where are we? We'll see. Hold on. Where are we now? We are at 9223. Jen, I don't
we
know.
can do that.
I don't know if we're going to make it by the 15th. You got 4 days to get 800 people. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I think that, one of the ways that we do that is we ask people to not only hype these videos, but also share them.
Yeah.
Sharing is a big part of the YouTube 2026 strategy. So if you have a following yourself and you want to share this video, whether it is in, critical of us, whatever, we have plenty of that. But if there's something that you agree with or disagree with, or even if there's a talking point, if you share it with your community on your community tabs and say, hey, listen, these two idiots were talking about this stuff. What do you think? Right? I mean, but basically, at this point, we're just trying to draw attention to some of these issues, like I said, and these cases need the attention. And hopefully somebody picks up on it and says, you know what, these guys are right. We do need to do a better job with these other cases.
Yeah. And folks, if you haven't listened to Monster, please do so. Really interesting work there. And so please go check that out. Joe, actually, I think we're probably going to be talking, correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably going to be talking about Dykes and Heuermann's court proceedings. So
yeah, you know what? I mean, right now we haven't come up with something specifically for Sunday, but I think we're going to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Between this week, and then we'll announce it, I think, after that fact, even though it'll be a shorter time frame for getting the word out there. Just everybody show up at 2:00. Josh and I are going to have something great we're going to discuss.
Right. And of course, folks, again, if you know of any folks in the community who might have had interactions, please hit me up. Again, I read all the comments and I'd love to hear and try and find out a little bit more. Thanks, everybody. Much appreciated. We'll see you next week.
Bye now.
Bye.